women, and then we're going to open the panel up to the questions, and you will learn all about how these three work together, and we will come away with a lot of lessons, I think, in collaboration, leadership, and philanthropy. So the women today are an amazing group, are just amazing, and many of you will know them all. Linda McGurn, Diane McFarlin, and Laura Rosenbury. So let me, as I told them, I'm going to be very truncated in the introductions because they've done so much that we could be taking up this whole time. Let me start with Diane McFarlin, who is Dean Emeritus of the College of Journalism and Communications. She just recently stepped down from that position. Diane started her career in high school in journalism and took a reporting job at the Sarasota Herald Tribune after earning her degree at the University of Florida. That was the beginning of an amazing career. I won't say she was a child prodigy, but she rose through the ranks and she became managing editor at 30 of the Sarasota Herald Tribune before coming to the Gainesville Sun, where she became executive editor, and went back 3 years later and had a long career at the Sarasota Herald Tribune, both as executive editor and then on to publisher. And I think it was 23 years there, and did amazing things. Started a 24-hour televised. Oh, let me stop 1 second to remind you all to mute. I am so sorry, I forgot to mention that, so please go ahead and mute. Anyway, Diane, under Diane's leadership, she didn't even mention this, but the paper won a Pulitzer. She did an amazing job. And then her life took an amazing turn, and she ended up back at her alma mater, the University of Florida, where she became Dean of the College of Journalism and Communications. And it was a real different path for her, but I can tell you, I've seen it up close, and she did a phenomenal job. The growth in that college has been amazing. She started the agency, an integrated communication agency, Gator Vision Sports Production, just the innovative news center, and more that you'll hear about today. So I said these would be truncated, and it's really hard to truncate them. Okay, next up is Laura Rosenbury, who is the Dean and the Levine Professor of Law at the University of Florida College of Law, the Levine College of Law. She joined UF Law in 2015 with the goal of raising the national and international profile of UF, and so far she's increased incoming applications by 110% and extended its reach around the globe, and she's enrolled of the most accomplished and diverse classes in UF Law's history. And she's raised $4.5 million for student scholarships. Before this, she was the professor of law and vice dean at the Washington University School of Law in St. Louis. An amazing career. She started out at Harvard, where she earned her undergraduate and Juris Doctorate degrees, and at cum laude. And she also enjoys gardening and working the crossword puzzles. So I wanted to add that too. So Linda McGurn, many of us have known Linda for many, many years. Linda is co-owner, I would say owner, along with her husband, Ken McGurn, of McGurn Investment Company. And Linda, I will say, has long been my hero, because when no one else was interested in downtown Gainesville, Linda and Ken put their money where their mouths were and really invested in what could have been a tricky proposition, redeveloping an area that was, for all intents and purposes, when they started, sort of abandoned and left for dead. And they have done an amazing job. They have run a management, incredible number of properties, and they've developed properties all over the state. They've also been, green before it was cool to be green. And they built their first building in 1980. They use green practices and 50% less energy than other buildings. And they really focused on that in a time when other people may not have done it. They've just done an amazing amount of things, including philanthropy. They have mentored startups, so that has been a way that they've really helped others. And they've also been the chair of the UF Capital Campaign, and they have donated so much to this community, a huge gift to the Museum of Natural History. That's going to be amazing. And now recently with this gift that we will be talking about today. So, you know, as I said, truncated, but there's so much more that we can say, but I think some of this will come out as we go forward. So we will begin our panel now, as soon as I have a drink. So Linda, we're going to start with you. And you and Ken have been residents of this community for most of your lives now. And you've been such great contributors to the community. As I said, leaders of the UF Capital campaign and making these big gifts. And I'm wondering, and I'd like you to start us off by talking about how the idea for this gift that would combine law and journalism and the First Amendment come about.
Thank you, Jackie. It is wonderful to be here because this is a story about women supporting women. I was very fortunate that there was a woman vice president at the UF Foundation who really wanted women to be involved with the foundation and become leaders. She ended up being my mentor and supporter when I joined the foundation board. Initially, unbeknownst to me, she helped me put me on committees and put me on a leadership track, which eventually ended up with me being the second woman chair of the UF Foundation Board of Directors in its 85 years of existence. That incredible woman I hoped would be on this Zoom call today, but that was Leslie Bram. I am forever grateful for her support, her mentoring, and her friendship. The most important initiative during my term was to form UF Women, whose mission was to educate, engage, inspire, and facilitate female alumni and supporters as leaders and philanthropists at UF. A group of amazing, committed women became a steering committee, and we met and researched and worked together to meet those goals. We basically learned that women want to be personally involved with others in their philanthropy and have a personal connection to causes they support. They want to know their gifts will make a difference and change things for the better, which is precisely what the Women's Giving Circle does. One of my inspirations was the story of Mary Elizabeth Garrett, who in the late 1800s, the Johns Hopkins Medical School needed money to open. Mrs. Garrett, along with about 5 of her woman friends, worked diligently to try and raise funds. It was difficult, and Miss Garrett ended up agreeing to give the majority of the funds, but on very specific conditions. The major one being that the medical school had to agree to admit women on the same basis as men. Amazing, incredible difference with her philanthropy. So fast forward a few years to 2017, when Ken and I agreed to be one of the couple co-chairs for the Go Greater campaign. Before we could ask others to support UF, we knew that it was important that we make our own campaign commitment. We didn't know how we wanted to spend the funds, and we did have a few years to decide. But I did want to make a different type of gift that would make a difference, and that is the start of how this began. During this time, I'd served with Diane on a search committee and on the foundation board. UF Women had visited the College of Journalism and were extremely impressed with what was happening there. Of course, we heard from Diane because she was the dean. But what truly impressed me was when several female students raved about the positive professional role model that they had in Diane, who was also highly regarded throughout the country. I also want to acknowledge Sandy Chance, who is on this call, another woman. She was executive director of the Breckner Center for the Freedom of Information at the College of Journalism. She spoke to UF Women and made us proud of what so many accomplished women were doing at UF. In 2015, as you heard, Laura became the first woman dean at the law school. Her selection was visionary and well-founded, as she has moved the law school up to its highest national ranking ever. It is amazing what a woman in leadership can do. As a law school alum, I reached out to her to get to know her and also offer support. After 2016, I have become extremely concerned with political issues surrounding disinformation. I believe that our country is going to be saved by independent investigative journalists and public interest lawyers defending constitutional rights, especially the First Amendment. I felt UF could be instrumental in addressing these issues, and I knew who could help me. I also knew that deans, both Laura and Diane, had campaign goals they had to meet. So I invited Laura, Diane, and Leslie Graham to lunch in November of 2017 at the Harn, and told them I wanted to make a campaign gift to their colleges. And I wanted it to center on First Amendment issues. I told them I would love for it to be a joint gift, but if that was difficult, it could be a gift to each of the colleges. I had no idea what it would look like, but I wanted to work with these women. Okay.
All right, well, that's terrific. So Laura, I think I'll go on to you next, and we'll talk about, so what came next when Linda approached you, and how did this particular proposal come about?
Thank you so much. This proposal was actually a fairly long time in the making. Diane and I were so excited to think about a joint project between our colleges involving the First Amendment. But it was hard to initially determine what that project could look like. We met with our joint faculties, representatives of our faculties, to talk about ways the law school and the College of Journalism could really create synergies between our faculty members. And we came up with various ideas involving potential legal clinics for local news sources, ways to gather more accurate information about police brutality, and other possibilities. But the world was also rapidly changing during this time. And as we spoke to our faculty members, but then more importantly, came back to Linda, we realized that this was an opportunity for UF to become a thought leader nationwide in the most, what I would argue, cutting edge threat to the First Amendment, which is misinformation. Those of you who are lawyers know that there is a mindset of First Amendment absolutism, that we should protect all speech, no matter its content. But that traditional argument that I think, Linda was somewhat sympathetic to, doesn't give us a way of fighting misinformation. Right? We have to take the First Amendment to a new level. And it's also a wonderful way for the law school and College of Journalism and Communications to collaborate, because access to reliable information, reliable data, is key to maintaining the rule of law. So we need to find ways that journalists and others can present reliable data, fight misinformation, if we want to maintain the integrity of our institutions. And I will say, Diane and I began to move in this direction because of Linda's passion about the turn in our political climate. Linda was the one who, finally said, I saw that another university appointed a chair to study misinformation. Could this gift be a way for UF to become involved in this complicated issue of how do you maintain freedom of speech while also combating misinformation? And so that's how we began to build upon Linda's passions to find something that would be a good collaboration between our two colleges that would also have a national impact. And Diane, I can turn it over to you to add, because I'm sure we have different perspectives on this, but I hope I represented briefly the path toward this ultimate project.
Yeah, Jackie, do you want me to?
Yeah, and just if you wouldn't mind, bring in how the Consortium on Trust in Media and Technology, which obviously you will. So yeah, we'd love to.
Yeah. First of all, I want to say you left out a real important part of my bio, and that was that I chaired the search committee that resulted in Laura's hiring as dean of the law school. I'm very proud of that.
Let's put the circle together here.
Right. So I have so much to say about this gift. This is truly a game-changing gift, and Linda's support and confidence in us is so powerful. And I know we're going to get a chance to talk more about that later. But regarding the consortium, that was really an initiative very separate from this gift. It was started, the provost invited the colleges to propose what he termed moonshots. Our college proposed the Consortium on Trust in Media and Technology to address what was becoming a ubiquitous erosion of trust in foundational institutions in this country. Many polls by Gallup, Pew Research, the Edelman Barometer, Trust Barometer, were determining that trust was in a free fall. And this was trust not only in media, but in government, in business, in NGOs. It was really across the board, and it was undermining how our democracy functions. So that was our proposal for a moonshot. It was selected, and the university seeded it with $1.2 million. In the beginning, and Linda knows this because she and I had many conversations early on, and she was present when I presented to the national board of the foundation on the Trust Consortium. In the beginning, we were looking at it as a big tent issue. It was trust seen in a ubiquitous way, and we saw it as an opportunity to capitalize on the University of Florida's great depth and breadth. We have researchers, experts in disciplines across the board that touch on trust. And so the idea was to build an ecosystem, and that we could build one larger than most institutions in the world because of the size and scale of the University of Florida. So what we learned over the first couple of years of the Trust Consortium was that was too big. It was too scattershot. We were going in too many different directions, and we needed to focus it in. So about the time that Linda began talking to Laura and me about a transformational gift was the time when we were beginning to focus in the efforts of the Trust Consortium and the focus of the Trust Scholars. At that time, we had a dozen Trust Scholars. And it was beginning to focus more and more and more around disinformation, because Americans were no longer in the same conversation, and our democracy cannot function if we don't work from facts to have constructive dialogue and debate about what is the right direction for our country and for our individual communities. So, the Lord works in mysterious ways, as my grandmother always said, because Linda is stepping up at this point. She wants to do something around this topic. Laura and I had already built a collaborative relationship for our colleges. There's some other examples of how we were doing that. And Linda was just giving us this surge, this momentum, this vote of confidence, and the wherewithal to do something really meaningful. And what that is to be able to bring in experts on this topic. Let me back up just a little bit. This is evolving so rapidly that
Okay, has Diane frozen for others or just me? Yeah. Okay.
Instantaneously.
Okay.
Sorry?
You were frozen for a minute, so you might want to go back just like 10 seconds.
Yeah, it says my internet is unstable. We were worried about yours, Jackie. Turns out to be mine. So go back to what part now? I'm sorry.
Let's see, where were we? I'm not sure exactly what we
Things
lost.
rapidly evolving.
Things
Right.
rapidly, yes, thank you.
Right. And so the pace of academic research and, the tenure track research could not keep up with the pace of change. So Laura and I realized that the way to address this was to bring established experts into the tent and bring them in as fellows at varying degrees of involvement, compensated accordingly, and let them weigh in with methods as ranging from white papers to instruction to writing articles for mass media. And I'm so excited about this because the McGurn Fellows will, really put UF on the map as a leading expert in this topic, on this topic of disinformation.
That's great. Well, that leads us to, maybe I'll ask Linda, and then we'll hear from all three of you in terms of a little more about working together and getting through rough patches. But I'd like Linda to tell us a little bit about the McGurn Fellows and, what they will do beyond in terms of what Diane was talking about and how you view that.
Exactly what they will do. I think we kind of heard from Diane in terms of doing research and
Right.
white papers. And I really have left everything up to these two women because I know they can handle the details. I have not said, I want this or that because they're the experts. So in terms of the details, I need to turn it back over to probably Laura.
Yeah.
Yes.
As we do that, though, I would like to just put a little period on that sentence because that is a really important thing that you just said, and that is the trust. That this is a really fine example of that you three work together collaboratively, you knew each other, and you trusted them to do exactly what would be the right thing. So from there, yes, we can.
Which makes Linda the dream benefactor.
Exactly.
I mean, the strings are not limiting to us.
Right. Yeah, there's nothing like a gift without strings, right?
Mm-hmm.
So how did you all, in terms of working together, and I guess I would ask maybe the two deans, because Linda was obviously very trusting and very flexible, but how did you two work together in terms of coming up with the gift? And were there any rough patches to overcome? I don't mean personally, but just administratively, from a bureaucratic standpoint, or is there anything that you could elaborate on there?
Well, I would say that, this is a very creative new model of how to structure a gift. It doesn't fit into the traditional categories of, naming a building or endowing, a chair or a professor, or even naming a pre-existing program. It was a model that sought to supplement the academic research that was happening, and to expedite it, as Diane said, by bringing experts who weren't merely scholars into the conversation to jumpstart UF's role as a thought leader in this area. And when Diane and I talked with our existing faculty, they often wanted to stick with the existing categories of the work that they're doing, whether it be, traditional research or law clinics, or even, supporting litigation, as opposed to thinking of something new. And that's why it took a while. And I must say that it was Linda who kept driving the train of wanting to do something that would, of course, have a lasting impact, but also an immediate impact. And so, it's I suspect it's slower than Linda would like because we don't yet have the McGurn Fellows. And so that's a little bit of a bump on a road just because it's new. How do we start getting them appointed? But we will have some with us for the next academic year. We haven't had any offers made yet, but we're hopeful to do that. And I want to thank Linda for her patience, and I want to thank Diane for giving me the courage to go beyond the categories that my faculty was used to think about a new model.
I think that describes it very well. You know, Linda had kept talking about the First Amendment, which of course is fundamental to what we're doing here, but we were taking it quite literally. And so many of the early proposals really addressed First Amendment issues square on. And what we needed to be was more creative. And that takes time. And it also it's an evolution because as has been pointed out already, during this period of time, so much was happening. You know, Linda started out by talking about the 2016 election. That changed our country dramatically. It changed the role of media. It changed the role of facts. It changed the role of truth and what truth means, how people come to that. And all of this was happening while we were having these conversations. And so slowly but surely, we were evolving, the conversation was evolving. And then as Laura said, Linda would come in and go, well, what about, she was kind of prodding us in a very gentle way, because as she said, her philosophy was that we had to come up with the program and we had to have the support of our faculty and staff. And she's right, that's critically important. If you try to force something on people, it generally is not successful. So that was just it turned out to be, I think, the perfect pacing, because where we've ended up is a really wonderful place. And so Laura, now that I'm not a dean anymore, I will say this on your behalf. Deans is a 24/7 job. It is so labor intensive. And so there's so many things to pull your head in another direction. The next critical step was to come up with the owners, the new owners of this project, who would be the ones to drive it. And so Laura has selected someone on her faculty. We've hired a managing director of the Consortium on Trust in Media and Technology. We have a new dean coming in at the College of Journalism and Communications. So now we have people in place who can really accelerate this in a way that, you know, Laura and I would struggle to do. And I shouldn't say owners, because, you know, Laura and the new dean are the owners, but we have sort of the project managers in place now who can make sure this moves forward in a concerted fashion.
Let me just say that I did not want to put a burden on Laura or Diane to put this program together. And as far as the timing, what I knew was critical is I did want the gift signed before Diane retired as dean, because that was part of the impetus for this gift.
Thank you. I will be forever grateful for that too, because I consider this one of the greatest achievements to have happened during my term as dean. And, you know, we never felt pressure. We felt this huge opportunity and a great desire to live up to the promise of this gift and do it justice. And the earlier proposals, many of which came from members of our faculty, we just didn't feel did that. And so we would get together and kind of look at each other like, you know, we're not there yet. This isn't it. And when we finally hit on it, and when we were able to say, and we have the consortium, and, you know, it can be another engine to drive this. It was just, you know, I think birds rose into the sky, and, you know, we could really tell that it was something that resonated with everybody.
Yeah, it's very interesting because you are really dealing with two different cultures. And even though you have the same ultimate idea in terms of, you know, freeing us from disinformation, the approach had to be very different, because the law school and the journalism college would have that different a different approach, but it sounds like this gift in a way helped you bring those two things together and come up with something that really worked for everyone. So that's really interesting. So another question is this, and this is really for all three of you, because one thing that's driving this gift, and I know two of you well enough to know about the values that would be behind it. If you were advising other women on how to come up with a meaningful gift, one that reflects their own values, what would you say? How would you go about doing it? And one that would also be something that would be doable.
It's finding something that you are passionate about. Obviously, the First Amendment, because what was happening, became a passion. But the Florida Museum of Natural History is another passion of both my husband and myself. So it's what you do at the meetings of the Women's Giving Circle. I know when you look through all those grants and the needs out there, you are committed to making a change. So it's really, what do you feel passionate about?
Yes, definitely. Yeah.
I would add that, of course, I'm sure you all talk a lot about how important it is for gifts to be strategic, and philanthropy has become exceedingly strategic over the years that I've been involved in it. It used to be that it was, based on the interest of a donor, and there wasn't a lot of planning that went into it. And now that's not the case. But in addition to being strategic, it's powerful if your gift is symbolic. And Linda's gift was very symbolic. Not only did it address this crisis of disinformation in our country, but it made some other important statements. It was symbolic in other ways. It said that you can count on women to address pressing issues and problems in this country. We know that men do that and do it well, but this reinforced the fact that women do it well. And which leads me to the second important message, was the power of partnerships. And I think women collaborate exceedingly well. It's more instinctive for us, I believe. And so Linda was reinforcing that. And then the third thing that comes to mind, and this was a critical thing for Linda and Ken, because they were playing a leadership role in UF's capital campaign, but it really spoke to UF's position as a worldwide leader, as the potential to take a leadership role in an issue that had global significance. And of course, they've done that with other gifts. That's not just this gift, it's their pattern to do this. And increasingly, I'm seeing donors do this. And I think when women do it, it positions women in particular as being very powerful leaders in their philanthropy.
Yeah. You have something to add? Okay. I was going to say yeah, go ahead, please.
I would just add, first of all, Linda said initially that she reached out to me when I became dean to offer her support. I would say that's an understatement. Linda provided key encouragement, and about 1 year into my deanship, when there was some concern about whether I was the right dean for the law school, and there was some backlash, and Linda insisted that we talk. She took me out to lunch, and she helped me grow as a leader and develop resilience even before we started talking about this gift. But as we all know, deans are evaluated in part by how much money they raise. And so that Linda wanted to take her support to the next level and support two female deans, what was so meaningful to me, and I assume to Diane as well. Also, I'll say, I've raised now with my team about $65 million in the last 6 years, but only of the gifts of $1 million and above, only 2 are from women. Most of the major gifts I've obtained have been from men. And many of them have a very different approach to philanthropy, very competitive approach. One of my major donors talks about what he calls the hormone theory of giving, which is that men give money because they want to prove they're better than other men. And that's why he wants me to do a lot of matches and challenges to get more of the big donors to give. That was never Linda's mindset. Instead, it was about her passion and trying to think about ways to bolster society when it was under siege, starting with the beginning of the Trump presidency. And this gift was signed before Diane retired at the end of the calendar year, so right before the holidays in December. And then, of course, on January 6th, we had a storming of the Capitol in Washington, primarily driven by misinformation, disinformation. And it was so wonderful to see the timeliness of Linda and Ken's gift and the way we could then immediately announce it as being responsive to one of the most important moments of our society, and it will continue to do so. So I just really appreciate Linda's focus on, as Diane said, how can UF be a leader in the most pressing conversations of our time?
Wow. I mean, really just, yeah.
Oh, well, I do need to add one thing. We had some wonderful lunches. We also got to be good friends. But this gift was a joint gift, and I don't want to leave Ken McGurn out. That while he let me do everything, it was a joint gift, and I know he's here, and so I thank him for that.
We thank you, Ken McGurn. We see you there. I will say it's very, very interesting. I hope Linda doesn't mind me sharing this. Linda and Ken, often it's, the alphabet, K-L, Ken and Linda McGurn. I think this gift, Linda wanted Linda and Ken McGurn. This is a women's gift, but Linda and Ken are an incredible example, which is an understatement, of a partnership in life that has just benefited the community amazingly. They support each other tremendously, and everybody who knows them has seen this, and even people who don't know them see it in the community and the things they do together. So yeah, we applaud Ken as well. We don't see his face, but we applaud him. But I'm a little overwhelmed because I'm listening to all this, and there's just so many things that the collaboration aspect of this, the respect and support of women, it seems to be so important here. And I just wanted to talk to you about in terms of, learning from this experience of how, one thing that was brought up a little earlier is that people in the old days, you had a gift, you'd say, I want to give you $1 million and I want you to spend it XYZ. And that may have been a model in the old days that could work, and no longer it does. So the ability and the open-heartedness to have flexibility and say, this is my value that I'm wanting to support. Now, how do we do it? That, I think, seems to be very important in terms of the world of philanthropy now. And for all of the philanthropists we have gathered on this call, could you talk a little bit about that, the importance of that?
Which one?
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, Linda. Well, I'll start with you.
Well, the key is I don't want to burden someone that I'm giving money to.
Right.
I mean, but I want to be able to support my ideas, and if certainly work with the beneficiary or dean or anyone else that I'm dealing with to make it worth within their framework. My idea is not to cause any difficulty, but to make sure that groups that I support, that support my values, are able to move ahead in the best way possible.
And I think the key is in finding the intersection of those values, which Linda did beautifully. Linda, they were her values, but she also knew they were the values of our respective colleges.
Yeah.
And that is, I mean, you know, that's really rocket fuel when you can marry those, because very often the donor stays engaged around that topic. The institutions are able to build on what they've already started and make an even greater impact. And it's just a virtuous circle.
Yeah, so can you share any advice for women trying to come up with, how do you articulate, you take a value you have and turn it into something that would make a meaningful gift? I mean, that's a difficult question, but where might you start if you're a woman and you want to, or a man, and you have something that you think is important? Diane.
Well, you know, I think Linda has answered that so well, because you know, where I think donors sometimes get into trouble is trying to direct the how, because donors can't have the knowledge to enable them to stipulate the how. They don't know how the organization works, what its opportunities and limitations are. Linda and Ken are close enough to the university to really understand how things work and what demands are on institutions of higher learning, but also what possibilities exist, what the potential is. Where might we stretch a little more? And this is a great example of that. How might we do a little more with this quandary of disinformation and fake news, so-called fake news, and you know, the slippery slope that our country's on? And that's, I think, the perfect formula. You have to start with a value. You have to make sure that value is shared. You have to be sure that the organization you want to support has the capacity and the wherewithal to carry it forward. And then you have to say, after conversations, obviously, but then you have to say, okay, I support you and I look forward to what you do with this.
Would you also, and Laura, would you like that?
I would just emphasize Diane's point about understanding the institution, but also seeking to stretch the institution. That's what philanthropy can do. We can get stuck in our bureaucratic ways, particularly in large organizations like UF. And Lyndon can understand the constraints, but also want to fuel our ability to stretch and become even more relevant. And that's what I so appreciated, that I never felt burdened. I felt inspired by Linda and Ken pushing us to do something slightly different, creative, and so responsive to the times.
Wonderful. Well, one question I have written here, but I think you've kind of illuminated this because you've all gotten along so well, is, you know, how you learn from your experience in terms of interaction and compromise. If there's any advice that you could pass along in terms of compromising in situations, but it sounds like you all were very respectful and agreeable with one another. But is there any time where you thought, okay, this is a compromise, and what can I take away from this situation? Let's see, Linda?
Actually, it was a great situation. We went out to lunch several times and talked about things that were happening, talked about general views of what's happening in society, of which we had similar views. I don't know who was going to pick up the check for lunch. That was the only thing. Otherwise, it was a great relationship. And I feel like that were friends, and that was a good benefit.
Right.
Yeah, I agree.
Diane or Laura? No, I mean, it sounds like you all had such a wonderful situation. Now, not all situations would be as smooth as this one, clearly. I mean, two colleges working together can be fraught, I'm sure, if they're not headed by women. And dealing with donors can also be the situation, but you all really in this situation, like shared values and goodwill and support really ruled the day. So
Absolutely. I think if I could just add, Jackie, I think one of the challenges is we all tended to be very differential to each other. And in doing so, it might have run a little, slower than if we'd started really pushing each other. But I'd much rather have it that way than us being on a tight timetable and being aggressive about it. Instead, it was something that unfolded. It unfolded at the right time. Of course, we didn't know that when we started the conversations, but it was a wonderful outcome. And so I think that would be, if I had to, cite a challenge, that would be it, is women do tend, we have so much mutual respect. And, particularly Laura and my beginning was one of her, it was revolving around her hiring and recruiting her to come to UF. So I think, maybe it would have moved faster if we had been more assertive about it, but I greatly prefer how it unfolded.
Right. And I mean, that support, this has come through so strongly, and support in ways that are obvious, but not obvious. I mean, I must say Linda's personal support, caring that this gift came through before Diane stepped down as dean, and coming when you were in a situation that was a little rough, Laura, coming and being there for you, not just as a friend, but as you could do this, let's get going kind of thing. It's remarkable. So I have one more question for Linda, and then I'm going to open it up to questions from everyone here. And I look forward to hearing. We already have one. If you prefer to just put your question in the chat, I can read it for you. So go ahead if you'd like to do that, and we'll give Linda the last word here with this. So Linda, we've talked about this a lot, but can you share any sort of parting advice for women who are trying to find a direction and a path for their philanthropy?
Well, let me give a plug to the Women's Giving Circle, obviously. But, any gift that you give to someone who's in need or an organization that's in need is transformational, no matter how big it is, how small it is. Helping make a change, make a difference is what we want to do. So it doesn't have to be big. It can be your time, it can be money, it can be so many things. You just need to care about making a change and making it for the better. Jacki, you're on mute.
I'm on mute.
Okay.
I've got a lawnmower going on outside, so I'm trying to see. So I directed this to Linda, but I also open it up to you two as well, if there are any advice in terms of finding your passion. I love the plug for the Women's Giving Circle. The power of collective giving is truly transformational. But is there, any other sort of thought, like how do you find your passion? How do you know what you want to give your treasure and time to? Diane, any?
Well, I think it all boils down to our priorities in life, and kind of knowing ourselves and what gets our heart pumping faster, whether it's through anger or concern or enthusiasm and excitement. And so, what I get is that the Women's Giving Circle does that as a collective, that you have those conversations around topics that are of great interest to all of you as a group of community-minded philanthropic women. And that's an exceedingly exciting process. And then I suspect that each one of you has particular issues, whether it's human services or education, civil justice, whatever it is, that you find yourself reading about more than anything else, and feeling emotion about more than anything else. And believe me, when you direct your philanthropy in those directions, and you know this, I'm telling you something that you're practicing, you know that there's no greater reward, no greater sense of satisfaction. You worked hard for that money. So to see it go to, such meaningful ends is really a virtuous mission. So congratulations. I don't think, a lot of communities have something like this, and it's really just a great initiative to be able to put your money and your heads together around philanthropy.
Thank you. Thank you. Laura, would you like to add anything?
And I would just say, if we look at it from the opposite perspective of the person asking for money, I think a lot of people are hesitant to ask for money. It's seen as crass or uncomfortable. But what has made me enjoy fundraising so much is realizing that it's about finding what makes someone tick, what their passions are, and then connecting those passions to something within, in my case, the law school or the larger university. And that makes fundraising enjoyable, exciting, fulfilling. I had no idea when I interviewed with Diane McFarlin in March and April of 2015 that fundraising would in the end become the most enjoyable part of my job.
Wow. Well, this is terrific. Thank you all so much. We actually have a few minutes for questions. So if anyone has a question, I have one in here already, but you can either raise your hand or speak up, or anyone. Okay. All right. Well, let me then read you this question. And this is from Nancy Hart. And she has said, what happened to the good old days when FCC required an hour of unbiased TV news every evening at 7? Is there a policy solution we can work toward? And whoever would like to jump into that first, I'm sure you have some thoughts.
Well, part of it is because the cable industry is, not public in the same way. And Laura, you were getting ready to.
Well, and this is exactly what we hope the McGurn Fellows will be working on, questions like this. It's not just cable, but it's also the rise of social media that's now being driven by not just people, but algorithms funneling out fake news and disinformation. It makes the policy fixes much more complicated. And so that's what we're hoping the McGurn Fellows will focus on and help us move toward, because we need to return to a day where there is more integrity in the news, including social media.
Well, and the mention of algorithms is so central to this because, people are going to news sources they trust. They just don't know that they're not trustworthy.
Right.
And algorithms are feeding them these sources based on the patterns of their searches online. So it takes them deeper and deeper down the rabbit hole. And many of them, I'm sad to say, are irretrievable. That's why human behavior and human psychology are two key components of our efforts, because we have got to understand better how people, how they go down these rabbit holes and what are the technological and policy solutions. So it's a very, very complex situation, and it's changing so rapidly. I mean, deep fakes now are being, the technology enables them to be constructed in a way that I defy you to tell that they're fake. So there's a lot to explore here, and we hope to bring in experts from around the country as McGurn Fellows to help lead us down this path.
Thanks. Yeah, it's frightening. It really is. One of the questions that just came in is, and I'm not sure really who it's from. Leslie got it and put it up there. Where do you see this project in 5 years? Because obviously this is an issue that's not going away.
Laura, you want to take that first since you're the sitting dean?
Well, so first of all, of course, in 5 years, I would like to say we have won the war against disinformation. But we know it's going to be much more complicated than that. But as Diane emphasized, we would like to see UF being a leader in proposing and implementing both technological solutions and policy solutions to this problem. It's really scary to me to think where we might be in 5 years. I don't think any of us predicted in 2016 that we would be where we are today in 2021. But I do hope the McGurn Fellows can mitigate the damage and begin to promote workable solutions that at least begin to address the problem.
Well, thank you very much. Do we have time for maybe one quick question? Okay. Well, I will instead direct you to the chat where Barzella has given information on a giving guide that Community Foundation created that helps people kind of figure out a little bit of a guide to where they'd like to give and to identify values and create your own personal giving statement. So the link to that is in the chat if you'd like to see that. In the meantime, I will say I have personally been really inspired by this conversation, and I appreciate you all so much, Linda and Diane and Laura, and what you've said about women working together, what you've said about collaboration and leadership and philanthropy, and we appreciate it. And thank you so very much. This was terrific. And thank you all for coming.